All right, I will be reading from Job 38, 1 through 7. Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind. He said, "Who is this who obscures my counsel with ignorant words? Get ready to answer me like a man. When I question you, you will inform me. Where were you when I established the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who fixed its dimensions? Certainly you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? What supports its foundations? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" This is the word of the Lord.
Hey everybody, my name's Tom. I'm the pastor here, part of the team at Imprint, and it is a real privilege to open Job 38 through 39 with you today. If you got your Bibles, open them up. There will be some scripture on the screen, but you might want to see it for yourself. And man, what a weird passage. If you are familiar with the book of Job, you know that Job was a really great guy who God was actually really proud of and had blessed abundantly. He had given him incredible wealth, honor, status, a great family, and Job was just one of the greatest men of the East. But there was a problem because there's this shadowy figure called the accuser who came up and made a public accusation against God and Job and said, the only reason Job is such a great guy is because you bribe him. And God answers the accusation by saying, okay, let's limit what you're able to do, but I'm giving you permission to strike Job. And so God limits evil and chaos, but he allows this accuser to take away Job's wealth and his family and everything. And it was brutal. I mean, all of his kids are dead in one fell swoop. And then Job gives full voice to his pain and sorrow in chapter 3 in the presence of some friends that came to comfort him. But this lament really offends their religious sensibilities, and so they start giving Job a hard time. And in 3 cycles of dialogue, they argue back and forth, and they just start breaking down and rehashing the same arguments while Job gets stronger and more confident that there's something wrong. I believe in a God of justice, but I've done nothing wrong. There must be something wrong with the system. And so in his final stand, he says, I want a trial. I want God to come and tell me what I've done. Like, I don't deserve what I'm receiving, much less like what he's really upset about, which is he's lost intimacy with God. And so for like 37 chapters, Job has been wrestling with suffering, just waiting and confident that God would show up, but like wondering, where is he? And finally, God shows up in chapter 38. And instead of doing anything that Job asked for, he starts asking questions. And now this is not in the text, but if you are walking through pain and suffering with a person, asking questions is one of the best things you can do for them. Good counselors know this. You don't give advice. You say, where does it hurt? What are you afraid of? What's it feel like? Let me be here for you and be a conversation partner, right? But God isn't asking those kinds of questions. Instead, he's asking about ostriches, and the foundations of the earth. Just very strange stuff. But Job is so disoriented in his suffering. He's wrestling with this experience, and he's just so disoriented that he's lost. He's become lost in the cosmos. And so God shows up in Job 38, verses 1 through 3, and it says, Then Yahweh answered Job from the whirlwind. He said, Who is this who obscures my counsel with ignorant words? Get ready to answer me like a man. When I question you, you will inform me. And now Joe read with some good-natured irony. But the question here that we have to get right, if you're going to read what God says to Job and how he interacts, you've got to get his tone right. And it's very easy to make the common mistake of thinking God shows up and blows Job out of the water. And he bullies him and he overpowers him as if to say, who are you? I'm amazing. Just trust me. Sit down, shut up. But is that the God that we serve? Is the God that Jesus reveals like that? And I don't think so. And so the tone must be different because remember, Job, in essence, is an abuse survivor. The accuser has abused him for no reason. He has tried to extract his own benefit out of the situation. His friends have been maybe not verbally abusive, but pretty close to it, and have accused him of terrible things. And so does God show up and kick an abuse victim while they're down? And I just don't think that that's what is going on. And I'm going to prove it, but I just want you to know up front, that's not who our God is. And that's not what is going on in this passage. For God to say, I'm big, you're small, shut up and sit down, would actually just defeat the whole purpose of the book. But God doesn't show up and say, Job, you're wicked. He doesn't say, you're stupid. He just says that you're speaking from a place of ignorance. You lack the perspective necessary to make comment on what you have. And you can be sincere and intelligent and, like Job, very morally serious and still be speaking from a position that lacks the perspective necessary to make comment. So the problem for Job isn't his character. It's actually his coordinates. He's lost. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know which way is up. He doesn't know what's going on. And Yahweh's questions aren't taunts or platitudes. They're an orientation. They're a tour. Now, you might be here today and you might be saying, well, Job was lost. And, Christians, I've heard the song, once was lost, now I'm found. But I'm not lost. I'm fine. And I would say, oh, no, you're not. If you're smug, if you're comfortable, if you feel settled in this world as it is and don't think you are lost, there is something fundamentally wrong with your perspective. Because the lost person isn't somebody who's just obviously falling apart. It is the executive who goes to work and is amazing at their job and everything they touch turns to gold. And yet when they come home, they feel so empty inside that they decide that a few nightcaps before bed is the way to go. A lost person is not somebody who's obviously falling apart. It's the couple who has everything: financial security, a great family, kids that love them, good jobs, fun neighbors, nice friends. And yet they stay awake at night and wrestle with why they feel so empty inside and they can't sleep and yet can't talk to one another about it because it seems so insane that they would be feeling this way. Lostness isn't just the obvious stuff. It's that feeling inside of us that we have grown tired of the experience of being who we are. And I think Job has gotten tired of the experience of being who he is. There's a great Southern Gothic writer named Walker Percy. And if you're familiar with Southern Gothic writing, you'll know that there's some language in there that I can't condone and would have no idea how to get that much facility with, nor should I. But he has a book called Lost in the Cosmos, and he says it's the last self-help book. He's so confident that this self-help book is the self-help book to end all self-help books. And like any good self-help book, it starts with a bunch of quizzes that help you understand whether or not you need to keep on reading the book. And his basic premise is that modern humans in the West have become lost. We've forgotten who we are, we don't know where we're at, and we don't know what we need, and so we're just confused and disoriented. And he spends, I think, 17 or 25 questions diagnosing what it feels like to be lost. And my favorite one is number 17, where he talks about the experience of being lost in relation to one another. And so he sets up a thought experiment where he says, say you're at a party and you're given a choice between A and B. A is you have a conversation with somebody that is the most amazing conversation partner in the world. Everything they say is interesting. And there's no lull in the conversation. They're just charming and beautiful. And you get to talk to this person for 2 hours. But don't you find yourself shrinking? That for every increase in beauty, every increase in intelligence, you find yourself becoming smaller and smaller? Or would you rather a comet hit the party and everybody dies and the two of you are huddled survivors underneath the table? And he says, if you answer option A, well, here's how he says it. He says, it will confirm that you will be exposed. That is, the unique, indefinable, singular nothing which you secretly believe yourself to be will be exposed at last, that you are one black hole among a billion other ordinary stars. Walker Percy. But isn't that how it feels sometimes when we're around other people? By comparison, we feel like they've got it together, but I'm lost. I don't know who I am. They're amazing. I don't feel that way. And Job is in a similar situation. Everybody else's life keeps on going on, and he's lost. He's gotten tired of the experience of being himself. And so what does God do? Well, Yahweh shows up. And let me just outline chapter 38 and 39. This will be helpful. He's going to talk in three categories in movements. He's going to first talk about cosmology. Where were you when I established the earth? You know, I made the cosmos, so macro, right? And then he gets down into meteorology, the weather, where does the snow come from, the ice, all that kind of stuff. And you're like, why is he asking about snow? And then he finally gets to zoology. So from the cosmos, the macro, all the way down to the ostrich and the eagle and the raven. And he's going to say some really significant things when he asks these questions. So let me read in Job 38, verses 4 through 7. Yahweh asks Job, where were you when I established the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. And remember, understanding is a wisdom word. And so he's talking about Job's perspective. He's talking about wisdom. He said in verse 5, who fixed its dimensions? Certainly you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? What supports its foundations? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Where were you when I created the cosmos? And he's going to keep on going on. But I think what he's saying by the question is like, Job can't answer, but I can. And I was there, and I actually did it. And he's saying, I create beautiful things. God, in all of these passages, in some way, is saying, I create beautiful things. Who am I? I'm the God who creates beautiful things. And he goes on in verse 8 and says, who enclosed the sea behind the doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and total darkness its blanket? When I determined its boundaries and put its bars and doors in place? When I declared, you may come this far, but no further, your proud waves stop here. Now, in the ancient Near East, and you could actually get into this mindset fairly easily, we don't have like mega battleships and things that can make it through the chaos waters very well, because like in the ancient Near East, you had these little tiny boats. They are chaos waters. It's where chaos reigns. Even in their cosmologies, the oceans are considered sources of chaos. And so God is saying, I create beautiful things, but I limit chaos. By my power, by my wisdom, I limit chaos. And then he goes on in verse 12. He says, have you ever in your life commanded the morning or assigned the dawn its place, so it may seize the edges of the earth and shake the wicked out of it? The earth is changed as clay is by a seal. Its hills stand out like the folds of a garment. Light is withheld from the wicked, and the arm raised in violence is broken. And this is a little bit more on the surface, right? I create beautiful things. I limit chaos, but I also limit evil. Now, he doesn't say I do justice, period. Because what he's going to be saying along this entire long poem is that I don't run the world according to justice. I run it according to wisdom. And so I limit chaos and I limit evil, but they are still part of my world and they have a purpose. All these questions, and Job can't really answer a single one, right? Like, where were you? Have you fixed the heavens in their place? Are you able to limit chaos and evil? And Job, of course, is going to have to say no. But God isn't merely demonstrating his superiority. He's giving Job a tour. He's starting at the macro level of the cosmos and leading Job through this beautiful picture of what he's created and who he is. He goes on in Job chapter 38, verses 39 through 41, and says, "Can you hunt prey for a lioness or satisfy the appetite of young lions when they crouch in their dens and lie in wait within their lairs? Who provides the ravens food when its young cry out to Yahweh and wander about for lack of food?" I think God is saying, like, I care for my creation. I provide. Right? He's giving prey for the lions. He's feeding the cubs. He's feeding the ravens. And in chapter 39, verses 1 through 4, he says, "Do you know when mountain goats give birth?" And, I mean, does anybody know? Like, have you seen it? Besides the zoo, that doesn't count. Like, what a weird question, God. "Can you count the months they are pregnant so you can know the time they give birth? They crouch down to give birth to their young. They deliver their newborn. Their offspring are healthy and grow up in the open field. They leave and do not return." Now, what's the point of this? If God is saying, I care for my creation, I think this passage tells us his activity in that caring. Think about a mountain goat giving birth. And this is still true. Birth is one of those experiences for humans and all else where you are most vulnerable and most afraid, especially for a mountain goat. Does the prey smell what's about to happen? I'm vulnerable. I can't run away at this point. And the possibility of death is always very real, even today in the birthing process. So what God is saying is, I create beautiful things, I limit chaos and evil, and I care for my creation, and I'm present in their hour of deepest fear and deepest vulnerability. This is who I am. See, at every turn, the creation God describes as not just vast, but it's beautiful and particular and lovingly known. He cares for it. And so, like, by extension, he cares for Job. And I think you could draw that from the text, just on the surface. But what you find when you go deeper into the text is that God is reversing everything Job said in chapter 3. Remember, chapter 3 is when Job says, "This is terrible. I wish I'd never been born. I wish I was dead. Everything's confusing. I don't understand what's going on. I am lost." And Job moves backwards from creation into darkness and death, poetically. He talks about wanting to reverse the order of creation, to have everything come to a singularity of his death. And God starts with the darkness, and in the same vocabulary, and with a lot of the same structure, he takes Job's poem in chapter 3 and reverses it. It's this beautiful affirmation of light and life, and it explodes outward in this panoramic, sweeping vision of God's good world. Now, God isn't giving Job an argument. He's not giving him information. He's not saying, let me show you where I'm at when the mountain goats give birth. Let me show you how I feed the lions. Let me show you how I set up the cosmos. He's not giving him knowledge. He's asking questions. He's inviting him into a conversation. He's inviting him into a relationship, right? And he's sending him a message by inference. It's not knowledge. It's something else. Now, Walker Percy has a few other books that I really love. One is called The Message in the Bottle. And he also uses an illustration in that about the Grand Canyon. Has anybody been to the Grand Canyon? Anybody? Okay, a few people. I've never been, but practically I have, because I've seen tons of pictures of it. I've seen documentaries. I've seen the drones flying over and all that kind of stuff. And probably for all of you that went there, you have too. He says this is kind of the process of the modern world that's become so visual, is that we become so familiar with things through all of the images we've seen them, but that by the time that we get there, it's very rare that we actually see the thing itself. We're seeing our idea of it. We're seeing a representation, or we're seeing it, but filtered through the representations, filtered through our expectations. And that's exactly what's going on for Job. He's not seeing the world properly. He's not seeing himself properly. He's not seeing his situation properly. And so he's not seeing God properly. He's assumed that since God is just, he must act with justice all the time. And he's become disoriented because that's not what's happening. He expects God to act in a particular way. And maybe in your life, you expect God to act in a particular way. Maybe you think that if you do the right things, things will in general turn out. And then it becomes very disorienting when it doesn't work out that way. See, the problem with the self, like the you-ness of you, is that you can't locate yourself from inside of yourself. Your lostness is a problem that you can't resolve. It needs a world larger than its current perceptions. You need something bigger than just knowledge about yourself. You need something more. And that's what God is doing. He takes Job on a tour through the wild donkeys, wild oxen, the ostrich, the warhorse, birds of prey. And they're all not domestic animals, if you notice. They're all wild animals. If you read through chapter 39, they give up food and human care for freedom, in the case of the wild donkey and the wild ox. The lion hunts without human permission. The warhorse may be under the control of the rider, but it actually is desiring to do the thing, and that's why it's become a warhorse. In all of these questions, do you know how these things work? God is basically offering a critique of Job's assumptions of who he is. He's saying, you think you understand yourself, but you're lost. And you think you've located yourself, but you've just located yourself inside of yourself, inside of yourself, inside of yourself. You lack the perspective necessary to understand what's really going on, and therefore you lack the perspective necessary to be found. There's this thing that we do when we realize we're lost. And we kind of retreat into one of two poles, either pure mind. We think if we have the right knowledge, if we know the right things, we can ignore our emotions and just kind of get them down there. We can make it through the world, and we try to self-define ourselves just by pure intellect and will. Or we kind of swing towards the opposite pole of pure, let's say, appetites. My appetites drive me, and so my feelings, my emotions, but also my desires will take me and help me decide who I really am. And God's tour through the animal kingdom is a critique of both. The animals actually know who they are. They act in a way that is congruent with their design. They inhabit the world that they were made to be in, and they act in a way that is in line with their design. Yahweh isn't telling Job to stop thinking. He's saying, you haven't been thinking deeply enough. And I'd say the same for us. Like, if you feel that lostness, like that emptiness inside, that there are these moments where you come alive, you feel like you're located, but then they always seem to fade away. It's because I think we don't know who we are. We forget, and so we need to think more deeply, not as like pure mind, but as in a remembering. Walker Percy, in that book, The Message in the Bottle, offers an illustration of how this actually works out. And it kind of maps onto Job pretty well. So Job is lost, disoriented, and he knows it. And we're lost, and we're disoriented, and sometimes we recognize it. But in The Message in the Bottle, Percy talks about a person who becomes a castaway. They wake up on a deserted island, and initially they know they're lost. And they have to find food and shelter and water and kind of work all these things out. And eventually they kind of cobble together a life. And they figure out where they can find food and water, and they build a nice little hut, and pretty soon it starts feeling kind of fun, kind of nice. You're on a deserted island in a tropical location. You've got all of the tropical fruit you could desire. You've got a warm home. It's beautiful. Nobody's hassling you. And pretty soon you forget you're lost at all. And I think that is the situation for us. Whether you follow Jesus or not, we have a tendency to forget where we're at and who we are. We have a tendency to forget we are a castaway on an island, and so we start acting as if this is home. This is where we're supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. What do you mean I'm lost? I'm fine. And it's these crises that break in and remind us, no, this is not home. Whether it's suffering like Job, whether it's a whirlwind and God breaks into your world. And what you need to do in those moments is remember or receive. See, on the castaway illustration, the castaway starts noticing some bottles washing up on the shore, a message in a bottle. And so he goes over, picks one up, pops the cork, and opens it up, and it says 2 + 2 = 4. And it's like, that's a weird thing to throw in the ocean. Picks up another one, and it says, if you rub iron and flint together, it creates fire. It's like, oh, yeah, that's true. I figured that out last week. Another one says bananas are good for your health. It's like, good to know. Just a bunch of bottles full of information. But then one day he goes out and he picks up a bottle, and it says, there are natives on the north side of the island on the first and third weekend of every month. Now that's not information. I mean, it is, but it's a different kind. It's not knowledge, it's news. It's something he couldn't have figured out from on the island. It's something that came from outside of himself, right? And so God comes in the whirlwind, which is a real crisis for Job. Let's not forget, that is a real crisis, because what killed his kids? It was the whirlwind. And he breaks into Job's life, and he comes not with knowledge, not with like 2 + 2 = 4, but he comes with news. He says, this is who I am. I create beautiful things. I limit chaos and evil. I care for my creation. I'm present in its moment of most danger and fear. And I've been listening to you, Job. So not only does he come with news about who he is, but he comes with news about who Job is, his true situation. See, crisis can only locate the self temporarily, because then we forget. But a person that breaks into Job's life can locate him permanently, right? Could help him be found, not just as a temporary feeling, but as an actual fact. And if we keep, not if, we're going to keep on reading the book of Job, and you realize this is the turning point. This is when Job realizes what he needs to know, not as knowledge that he figured out, but as news that he received. See, the subtext running underneath all of God's questions is a set of quiet affirmations. I was there. I saw. I was working. I know. And I know you. And so God asked Job, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? And the answer for Job and for all of us is nowhere. I don't know that stuff. I lack the perspective necessary to run the universe. But God says, I actually have that perspective. I have that wisdom, and I know what I'm doing. So not sit down, shut up, be quiet, and trust me. Or else, why would he ask all the questions? Instead, he's inviting Job in to participate in what he's doing, to participate in a mystery. There's one biblical figure who was there at the foundation and who wasn't lost, but decided to get lost so that we could be found. And he comes not with knowledge about how to be a better person or about how to get our act together or about much of anything other than I love you and I died for you. And that person is Jesus. Jesus is the pre-incarnate Son of God and intentionally moves into a state of disorientation and lostness, not just for the heck of it, but because he loves you. God cares for his creation and is present with it. And so Jesus enters into the scene And it willingly becomes lost so that he can participate in what is going on in our lives. He lives a perfect life that we are actually designed to live. If you want to know what God would have asked about the human had he continued to go, look at Jesus. We all can get a lot of information about what a wild ox is supposed to do. But if we look at our own lives, why do the big questions keep on coming up? What should I do? How should I respond? What should I say? Should I take that job? Should I move to that place? Should I bail on this person? We come up short with all of those answers, and we don't know what it is to be human. But Jesus comes and shows us what it looks like to be a true human, what real humans look like in right relationship with their true location and their true relationship with God. And then he dies. He takes all of the things that we have done or failed to do, all of those rebellions that we rebelled against God in ignorance or on purpose, and he absorbs them in his death. And they find a location in him, and he absorbs it and does away with it, and then is resurrected on the third day to say, I am inviting you now into a new way of being human, into a new life. And anybody that responds to that by saying, I want to follow that Jesus, is invited into a new humanity with a new destiny. Job is being located in God's good world, but he didn't have Jesus to locate him in God's eternal plan. And Jesus locates you in his eternal plan by saying, I want you to follow me and have a new life and a new power to live that out by my Spirit. I want to invite you into a new mission, a new purpose, and a new family. And I want to give you a new destiny. And that destiny is the world as it should be. Right? The gospel isn't accept Jesus and then you get to go to be with him in heaven when you die. That's not the gospel. The gospel is God has a plan to renew all of creation, and he wants new humans to live in that new world with him. A world like this, solid, not heavenly with baby diapers and harps, something solid, tangible. God created a beautiful world that he wants to make new so that he's no longer limiting chaos and evil, but he does away with it. And then he wants to invite you to participate in it with him. And the New Testament says that starts now. Eternity starts now. If you have given your trust to Jesus, then that starts now. So that you know who you are, you know what it looks like to be human, and the act of faith is constantly remembering that truth, constantly remembering the gospel and shoving it down into your heart so it starts to live out through your life. And then you participate in that new creation now. And it's so mundane. It doesn't actually preach very well, honestly. But you know what it looks like to live new creation now? To be found? It means that you have a new relationship to work. It's no longer something that you're trying to eke an identity out of. It's something that you participate in because God is a worker. Genesis 1 says he works with his hands. He's a potter, he's a gardener. And that there's a beauty and a transcendent majesty to just working with your hands or working with a computer, to doing good work, to building good software, to creating a healthy work environment as an HR rep. There's something actually spiritual about passing good policies and building good roads. But that only happens if you've been located in the right story. That only happens if you're a part of God's story. You have a new relationship to suffering. So if you're lost, suffering is that disorienting malfunction. Something is wrong and I've got to get rid of it. I need to explain it away. It's tearing me up inside and I don't know who I am anymore. But a suffering person who has been found finds that suffering fits into a larger story. And so God isn't telling Job, hey, suffering fits into a larger story, so don't worry about it. He's saying, your suffering is a part of my larger story, and so let's work through this together. And that's what he's going to go into next week. I think that for us, we are a community that is being transformed by the gospel, that says we once were lost. We really were lost. To be apart from our God is to be lost. But by the grace of Jesus Christ, we've been found. Jesus says his whole mission was to come and seek and save the lost. He says so in Luke. Oh, I put it up there. Oh, cool. Luke 19:10. That's convenient. Thank you, Molly. He says that's his mission, to seek and save the lost. And so you might be here and realize, I'm lost. I'm trying to get an identity out of a bunch of things. It's not working. Life is hard and painful. And Jesus comes to you today and says, I want to find you. I want to invite you into a relationship. I want to invite you into a better story. And for us as a church, we are found, not because of who we are, not because we became good people, but because he came to us at one point and said, come with me, follow me. I want to do life with you. And as a whole people together, as a family, we put that on display here, right now, as we gather in the 5-minute break. Again, this does not preach well. It's so mundane. But seriously, during the 5-minute break, we are participating in God's family life together right here. But if that's all we're doing, then we're missing out. If this is the extent of your family life with the people of God, you're missing out. Because God speaks through his written word, and he speaks through his people, and he speaks through his spirit. And he is more near to us when we are together than almost any other time, with few exceptions. And so are we gathering together? Are we involved in small groups or Bible studies or knitting groups? It doesn't have to be something official. Are we gathering together as the people of God to remind ourselves of the story that we are a part of? Are we reminding ourselves and each other that we have an identity and it belongs to us through Jesus Christ, that we have a family, that it belongs to us by what he has made? Do we remind one another that we have a purpose and a new mission? Do we remind ourselves that we have that new destiny on a regular basis? Because Sunday is just not going to cut it. I mean, I've been talking for 36 minutes, and you are going to blow me out of the water time-wise with your next binge watch. I don't stand a chance, There are stories out there that can try to give you an identity, try to locate you in a story. But history has just borne it out. There's only one story that actually lasts the test of time. And it's the story God is telling and that he's inviting you into right now. Do you want to be a part of that story? For the first or the 1,000th time, do you want to be a part of God's story? Let me pray. Father, we see that you've created a beautiful world, but that it is not as you intended it to be. We see that you care for your creation and you care for us, but that you have more to offer than just comfort, more than just sustenance. You want to give us a life. I pray that you would help us wherever we're at to see the life that you are offering through your Son, that you would give us the words to accept that life and to respond to you, so that we can find our identity and we can find our location in you. Thank you for your story, the narrative that you tell that's not just a fairy tale, but is the truth and is history. We turn to you now in response and ask you to meet us where we're at, and know that you are present. Amen.